share those barriers, but also discuss opportunities and create a platform for learning amongst all of us. It's really great to see so many of you around today, because it shows us the topic is of interest to so many actors. And Ronald, sorry, I'm going to need the hosting powers for the poll. So as a starting point to get to know a little bit who is here, we are going to be sharing a short poll to understand who is present today. You should be seeing it on your screen in a moment. And please tell us with which type of institutions you associate the most. Please note, all of the polling questions we are going to be doing throughout this meeting are really meant, are completely anonymous. It's really just to get a feel of the audience and get people to tell us who they are, what they think. We want to keep the session as interactive as possible. Thank you to all of you who are voting right now. Let's give a few more seconds to others. And since we want the session to be really interactive, we will be sharing a few polls throughout. We will also not be in the plenary throughout. We will be listening to our experts, and then we will have opportunities for Q&A and for breakout discussions. Let me share with you the results of who is here today. So can you see the results? We have 14 participants who associate most with financial service providers. Great to have you around. And then one person is feeling like they are representing the regulator side of Uganda, one representing mobile network operators, and you can see the rest of the poll results on your screen. Thanks for taking this. We also just wanted to give everyone a bit more time to get into the discussions with a general question on access to financial services. And so I'm going to share a second poll question. And this one is asking you, sorry, wrong poll. This one is going to ask you, where do you think most refugees save their money? So the options we have for voting now are banks and MFI, VSLAs, Village Savings and Loans Associations, SACCOs, They Save at Home, or other. I see 24 people have been voting. Let's just give a moment to others who would like to also share what they believe is the way people mostly vote. Save, sorry. People mostly save. I think there was an issue with the poll because I see now only 7 people have voted. So I'll just give everyone a moment to vote on where they think refugees save their money as a primary possibility. Okay, sorry, I think there is a small issue with the polling mechanism, but you should still be seeing now that 44% amongst you believe VSLA is the main place where refugees save. And this is actually quite close to reality. Based on a survey conducted by PHP Development in Naki Valley and Kirandongo between August and October 2020, we were able to gather some insights and poll a number of refugees on where they mostly save. Okay, sorry, there is someone that is using the poll at the same time than me, so can you stop doing that, please, my co-hosts? So the findings from the survey by PHP were that people are mainly saving using VSLA, the VSLA approach. So between the two settlements that were looked into, VSLAs represented either between 55 and 73% of where refugees are saving. And actually the second most chosen answer by the respondents was saving at home. And this is very representative of the issue we are here to discuss today. How can we provide more solutions for people to access formal financial services and move away from simple saving at home? And for this discussion, I'm joined today by a group of great expert panelists that will be able to share some of their experience on barriers and opportunities. Today, and I will ask the panelists to start turning on their videos, please. Today, we have with us Hannington Tenge from Yugafod Microfinance Limited. Hannington is the manager for business research and development. We have Jenny Caswell, Director of Research and Insights at the GSMA. Anita Asimwe, the Uganda Digital and Innovations Coordinator for Done Church Aid. Tyson Muhumuza from Moban Sacco, Nakivale, Manager of the Sacco. And Eunice Mwende Kiteme, who is currently the ECO Multipurpose Cash Consortium for the Danish Refugee Council and incoming coordinator for the Cash Working Group. Welcome to the panelists. Now the floor will be yours. So we are really looking forward to hearing from you. Dear participants, as we move into the panel discussion, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box. During the panel discussion, we will be checking the chat box to collect questions that we will then be able to ask the panelists to answer in a Q&A session. For this panel, we will be starting by hearing from you, Tyson, and I would like to invite you to share with us for 5 minutes an introduction of yourself and your work, and then tell us a little bit about the experience that guided the creation of Moban Sacco. What were those frustrations and the challenges that you encountered and that led to creating a Sacco in response to the needs of refugees for financial services? Over to you, Tyson. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm Tyson Muhumuza, as said. I'm the manager Moban Sacco. Been in the settlement now 4 years, since 2016. Moban Sacco, Moban stands for Moro Brotherhood and Neighborhood, which is savings and cooperative society registered in Uganda. And it was registered since 2013 and been in operation for now 7 years. And most of our operation based in the refugee camp.
Sorry, we are having a bit of a bad sound. Can I ask you to start over again?
Sorry. I'm Tyson Muhumuza. I'm the manager, Moban Sacco. I've been within the settlement for now 4 years. And Moban stands for Moro Brotherhood and Neighborhood, which is a savings and credit cooperative society limited. It's registered, it's registered since 2013 and been in operation for now 7 years. And it is located in Nakivale refugee settlement, which is in the southwest part of Uganda, and in district called Isingiro. We are having a membership of 3,972 members, 124 shareholders, and of which amongst the membership, 50.7 are women, 49.3 are men, 38% of the 3,972 are nationals, and 62% are refugees. Our own repayment rate within the population that we serve is 93%. Moban Sacco was started by the 20 groups which had different professionals, where there was medics, there was agriculturists, there was people dealing in transport. So they used to meet monthly and they would contribute small. So the pool of contribution became much, and they needed a place where they could do saving as well as access credit at a quite low interest rate. So by that time, there was no financial institution in the settlement that could provide those financial services. And it was only in Mbarara, which is 60 kilometers from the settlement. The road was also impassable, and there was limited transport means and the poor climate of the place. So unemployment, communication barriers, tribal conflicts, for example, Tutsi and Hutu, forced people to come up with those groups that could act as a mediation tool and eventually formed the circle. So Moban has, one of the other things Moban has done right now is has increased its financial literacy from the then 5% in 2013, if we could do a random search by then, to currently 45%, that is by the surveys that we are doing currently with our members. It has also acted as an entry for most of the financial institutions in Nakivale, because most of them do research on us, and we also entertain, because we also have services that we offer in collaboration with other financial services. It has also oriented the formation of sister circles in other settlements. That is to say, Orchinga refugee settlement, Chaka, Wamwanja, and Parabek, which is in the northern Uganda. They currently have a running circle. And the financial literacy has also helped the circle to provide more convenient financial services to the people, especially the services that provide needs to their to the exact needs to the community, to the members. It has also increased savings within the community. We have Moban Circle had an initiative where it had problems with we did a survey where we got to find out the beneficiaries of our own. 90% of the beneficiaries were men, where there was women having the 10%, which was the lowest percentage. So we ran a campaign where by a female board of governors, members, they ran a campaign and which they managed to mobilize women. Currently, we have 213 women registered with the circle in Nakivale. One of the other reasons why women were few was they would fail to get grantors, because if they would also not, they would not be fail to get acceptance from their husbands. If someone would go, maybe a female ask for guarantors to be guaranteed by a gentleman, it would be asked for favor, maybe money. But the move was to teach them financial literacy, show them the use of being in groups so that they can help themselves, guarantee themselves, as well as make it easier for them to access credit. So as we speak now, 54% of the loan beneficiaries are now women within our mobile circle. We have also extended agency bank. We have agency banking where we are extending services to of commercial banks. We are now agents with Centenary Bank, Equity Bank, as well as Opportunity Bank. We also have digitized our system to fit the technology trend, whereby right now people receive SMS alerts per transaction. We are trying mobile banking, merchant payments, and MasterCard QR codes, so that we conveniently and eliminate the cash transaction with the existence of the COVID-19. It has also created, of course, jobs for the community, since now people know the use of money, and most of the people used to have money and they just concentrate on using it for food. Now they have set up very many businesses. As a result of the loans we've been extending to the communities. However much small it is, has shown the capacity, even if someone had as small as maybe anything, he can start up and do something for himself. That's so.
Thank you very much, Tyson. That was great. A great overview of a lot of the topics we're going to be talking about today. It's really impressive to hear the success of shifting from having 10% women into having 54%, and the question of gender inequalities we will be touching on a few more times. Thank you also for sharing those building blocks of success of connecting with financial service providers, including strengthening group structures and also using digitalization as a way to connect better with the financial service providers. And on the point of digitalization specifically, this is something that humanitarian and development practitioners are increasingly understanding how important it is to work with groups and help them digitize to be able to access financial inclusion. On this point specifically, I will invite Anita to introduce herself and tell us more about DCA's work with VSLAs and FinTech. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. Good morning to you all. My name is Anita Simwe, and I'm working with Dan Church Aid, also called DCA. DCA is a relief and development organization based in Denmark. We have been supporting development and humanitarian programs in Uganda for the past 35 years, where our key competencies are in livelihoods, food securities, humanitarian response, and civil society development. So today I will talk about the work we are doing at DCA in advancing financial inclusion in refugee and host communities in West Nile. I'll specifically talk about our innovations on digital finance, as well as cash-based programming. So last year, we had a 12-month pilot where we digitized 100 saving groups. And what we did is that we digitized the saving group records. We have a digital savings ledger that has the ability to track individual member savings progress, track any outstanding loans and any other fees or fines within the circle. But more importantly, why we're doing this is to create a credit history in the process of linkage of the groups to formal financial systems for access to credit and secure savings. So the problem we're solving is that over the years, we've got a lot of feedback about limitations when it comes to the access to capital and the limitations of it in order to meet the financial needs of the individual members. So during this process, we met with multiple partners, financial institutions and fintechs. We assessed their suitability and readiness. We looked at the products that they had and their geographic presence. We also did assessment for the different saving groups. Some were ready for digitalization, some were not. We had different criteria. For example, some of the groups should have existed for at least a year before digitalization. So our partners on this project, we are working with Ensubuco, which is a fintech. Ensubuco had prior experience working with digitalization of circles. We also have the financial institution partner. We have two of them, which is Equity Bank and Vision Fund. Equity Bank has been in the space, doing in the cash-based interventions with WFP. So they've invested and continue to invest heavily in the agency banking infrastructure within West Nile, within the surrounding refugee and host community settlements. So some of the key lessons as we implemented this project, when we started, the business model was changed severally. We had assumptions that we started with that were not working, and we did several iterations on this model over the 12 months when we were doing a pilot. So for example, we started with an assumption to have digital agents enter transactions on the app on behalf of the groups, but later we realized we had underestimated the digital capacity of the secretaries of the groups, and they had enough capacity to to run this application. And in doing that, one of the benefits that we immediately were able to realize was the efficiency of the groups increased tremendously. Some of the tasks that were time consuming, for example, computation of loans and reports, was now taking a much shorter time. So meeting time was reduced literally for some of the groups from 2 hours to 1 hour. So they had time now to focus on the most important things within the meeting, and then they had more time freed up to focus on other economic activities. There were, of course, challenges within the time when we did the pilot. We had challenges around access to internet. We had challenges on access to phones. We had challenges on GSM network, access to network issues. We had challenges around the business and process model that we're using. And along the way, we continue to improve the model in partnership, as I mentioned, with the fintech that we're working with in Subuco. We're working to introduce a digital marketplace where the members can be able to access or purchase phones on the marketplace. They can be able to buy airtime and bundles. It also creates a model where the digital community entrepreneurs, and these are the partners that we are working with that support the groups in their journey of digitalization. So we are continuing to scale these efforts this year on a project with DINU. It's a DINU project called Development Initiative in Northern Uganda. It's a 3-year project. One of the activities that we have is digitalization of saving groups. We shall scale our efforts from the initial 100 to another 400 saving groups. So these saving groups will be linked, digitalized and linked to a financial service provider for access to savings and loan products. So very briefly, I'll also talk about
Anita, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you, but this was a good breaking point in your overview. Great to hear about the iterations, really critical pieces of any innovation program, and how you can, by consulting users, really discovering new capacities, new pathways, and it's really interesting to hear how you've been able to do this and now moving into the scaling phase. As we are hearing from different humanitarian experiences, I would invite Eunice to tell us a little bit more about the possibilities of connecting refugees to mobile financial services specifically, based on some of the experience with the Multipurpose Cash Consortium. Tell us a little bit about key considerations and workarounds you found, a little bit like Anita did with DCA, and maybe also if you can touch upon how some of the coordination forums in place in the sector, like the Cash Working Group, can support actors taking on such endeavors. Thank you. You're still muted.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for finding time to be with us today. I'm going to share my experience as the Multipurpose Cash Consortium coordinator that is implemented by the Danish Refugee Council and funded by ECHO, and also the experience that we have had within the Cash Working Group, where I've had the privilege of sitting, and particularly on the Cash Task Force, where a follow-up workshop was held on how mobile money has actually transformed how we are doing cash delivery programming in Uganda. This is all aimed at creating innovative ways of how we are transferring cash to our beneficiaries, and I will be touching on experiences of both institutions. How we did it with the Multipurpose Cash Consortium, of course, now with the COVID situation starting, but even way earlier, we wanted to diversify how we are providing cash to our beneficiaries. And then we went into a process where we negotiated framework agreements with financial service providers. And that also involved in some cases, aggregators to help us to provide mobile money to beneficiaries who are across a wide range of network from the mobile network operators. We also created a lot of awareness to our beneficiaries on why this was going to be an effective way of transferring cash to them, very convenient and discreet. And alongside the cash that we are supporting them to have, we also paid for one-off withdrawal fees so that beneficiaries are able to withdraw their money once they receive it. And we've done this in collaboration with other cash interventions being done in the settlements, including the food cash for food distributions done by WFP. So that's been the practice that we've generally adopted ourselves into, and different consortium members have different framework agreements with the financial service providers. Now, the experience that we've had has also been a very important learning point for us. One of the key things that we have actually realized is that majority of the people that we were targeting for cash distributions did not even have the mobile phones. They wanted to get the money through mobile money, but they did not have the mobile phones. They had a bit of experience from Congo because this is the Southwest where we are targeting Congolese caseload. They had a bit of experience in using mobile money back in Congo, but they no longer had the mobile phones. And those that had mobile phones had SIM cards that were not registered on their names. And you know, for accountability purposes, this presents a very huge challenge where the name that appears is not the same name as the one that you targeted. So that becomes a very big challenge for us who are providing money through mobile phones. I realize that many women don't even have the phones. They don't know how to use them, and they don't even have access to mobile money. So the majority of those that had the phones were actually men, and women represented a very small percentage of those that had mobile phones. The knowledge on how to use the mobile phones, it may seem basic, but we actually realized that majority of them didn't know, for example, if you lost your SIM card or if you lost your PIN, how would you access to this kind of information? So our awareness sessions were tailored to provide the very basic knowledge of how to use mobile phones and how to access your money through the mobile money. There was also a big challenge on user identification. We realized that more and more, beneficiaries have more than one SIM card, which is not sometimes the case. I mean, it's difficult to verify these beneficiaries. And the UNHCR data, providing the data on persons of concerns is a bit late in terms of updating where we are. The last time is 2018, and of course there's a bit of a backlog that needs to be streamlined in that. So the verification process becomes quite difficult for that. Then the network connectivity issues, most of the time because of the ecosystem challenge, the absence of adequate agents in the field, challenges with the float, these continue to become challenges, but there are opportunities to use the cash working group as a coordination mechanism that can actually bring both the private sector, the government, and the international agency to really talk about some of these challenges and provide a good common cash delivery platform that everyone can be able to use it. And there's also the opportunity to do joint advocacy and joint awareness sessions for the beneficiaries if people can be able to come together. And involving the private sector to look at the refugees as a very important caseload that could actually be profitable for them. And at the same time, the refugees could use this mechanism to access their cash. So there are great opportunities there. Thank you.
Thank you, Eunice. Great conclusion, giving us positive perspectives. Less positive, the gender divide gap in use of mobile phones. And we would like to discuss this a little bit further and give you an opportunity, you participants, to all tell us what would you think right now is the percentage of women who own a mobile phone in BDBD settlements. You can see the poll and you can vote. Just remember, this is all anonymous, so don't worry about not getting the right answer. This is just so we get this picture really concretely. What is it that we are talking about when we are discussing using mobile phones and mobile financial services to support refugees? What is the proportion of women in BDBD that own a mobile phone? Thank you for voting. As you can see, many amongst you voted either 21% or 36% of women have a mobile phone. The answer is actually 36%, so very well-informed audience, and it's a very small proportion indeed. Now, let's just see what is the difference if we are looking at men. What is the proportion of men that own a mobile phone still in BDBD settlement? Is it 46%, 72%, 52%, or 67%? Thank you for voting. And as you can see now on the screen, many amongst you voted 67%. This is the correct answer. 67% of men have a mobile phone in BDBD. As you can see, this is almost double the proportion of men as opposed to women that have access, that own a mobile phone in the settlement. This information has come from a report by the GSMA, Bridging the Mobile Gender Gap for Refugees. We will now hear from Jenny some more insights that the report is sharing in terms of different levels of inequalities in the settlement. The study covered Rwanda and Uganda, and we will put the link to the full report in the chat box as well, so that you can all have a chance to have a look at it in your own time. Over to you, Jenny.
Thank you very much, Charlene, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's really good to be here. So for those of you who are less familiar with GSMA, just a brief introduction of who we are. So the GSMA is the Trade Association for Mobile Network Operators worldwide, and we unite more than 750 operators around the globe. And I work within the foundation arm of the organization in a program called Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation. We're funded by the UK government, the FCDO, and our overall mission is to accelerate the delivery and impact of digital humanitarian assistance in an inclusive and dignified manner. We do this in a number of ways, mainly by working really closely with our mobile operator members and our humanitarian partners to catalyze sustainable partnerships. We also conduct research, making sure that we put end users at the center. We drive innovation through an innovation fund, and we work with policymakers to build more enabling policy environments. And so we've been working specifically on focusing on looking at the opportunity of mobile money as a driver of financial inclusion in humanitarian contexts. And Uganda has been one of our focus countries. And we've spoken a lot already about how mobile money presents many opportunities for financial inclusion for refugees, but there unfortunately are a host of challenges that many of the speakers have already touched on. And we've been trying to address these over the past 3 years together with our partners. So I'm just going to touch on 3 areas that we've been working on to try and drive forward financial inclusion for refugees and host communities in Uganda. The first area is building a digital ecosystem. The second is strengthening the evidence base, which speaks to what Charlene has just presented. And the third is catalyzing sustainable partnerships. So starting with digital ecosystems, we found in our work that it's really crucial in order to drive financial inclusion, especially in humanitarian contexts, to build the digital ecosystem for a commercially viable business case, so that we can really ensure that products and services are sustainable in the long term for end users. And there are a number of prerequisites that must be in place to build the sustainable digital ecosystem. And we've heard Eunice and Anita also touch on many of these. So, for example, we need to ensure access to phones in the first place, digital skills, coverage, power, agent networks, enabling policy environments, and the list goes on. And unfortunately, many of these are more complex in humanitarian settings. The second piece is working to build and strengthen the evidence base to ensure that we're driving equitable digital inclusion. And this speaks to what Charlene had just mentioned. We've actually been conducting some research that was published last year called The Digital Lives of Refugees. We conducted the research with UNHCR. And for the first time, we managed to quantify the mobile gender and disability gap in Bidi Bidi in northern Uganda and in Kiziba in Rwanda. And this was to highlight the risk of accentuating existing inequalities if we don't take time to understand the nuanced needs of marginalized groups when it comes to digital inclusion. So as we've seen in the polls, women in Bidi Bidi are 47% less likely to own a phone compared to men. In lower middle income countries, this gap is 7%. So it's really heightened in humanitarian contexts. And people with disabilities in Bidi Bidi were 10% less likely to own a phone compared to those without disabilities. So it's not only important just to quantify the gaps, but really understand the reasons behind them. And so in our research, we also identified that the key barriers to mobile phone ownership were affordability, literacy and digital skills, and charging. KYC also came up as a key challenge, and we've been advocating really closely with UNHCR and UNCDF, which resulted fairly recently in the Ugandan government adopting a more proportionate and enabling policy related to the proof of identity for mobile access for refugees. So with the robust data that we have to understand the gaps and the reasons behind them, the third and final area that I just wanted to touch on was how we're now starting to create strong partnerships with stakeholders to drive forward projects to address the barriers that we've identified. So one of the main projects we've been focusing on is to address the digital literacy and mobile gender gap. And we're working with Grameen and MTN Uganda in Bidi Bidi to drive financial inclusion specifically for women. And so we've created a digital financial training curriculum for women to train them to become mobile money agents and also digital literacy change agents, where they can then go on to train others on digital financial literacy. As I said, we're rolling this out in Bidi Bidi and we're planning to scale it up early next year. The curriculum was actually just launched today, which is really exciting. We can share that on the chat. A second project we're working on is with MTN, where we're rolling out mobile money training focused on the humanitarian code of conduct and protection. And we're planning to scale this up to 80,000 agents across Uganda. This is replicated from a successful model that we've already done in Rwanda. And then finally, we're trying to tackle the energy challenge, and we're funding through our innovation fund a number of projects looking at things like pay-as-you-go solar and community battery packs with a number of service providers. So in conclusion, as you can see, we're trying to tackle a whole range of barriers in a holistic way so that we can ultimately build the digital ecosystem in refugee settlements across Uganda to be able to drive financial inclusion in the long term for end users. Thanks, Charlene.
Thank you very much, Jenny. As you highlight, the holistic approach is so critical. It's interesting to hear about, some of the barriers that maybe we oversee, we overlook if we have not collected more information about the reasons behind them, like the charging question. Very simple, but critical. But also very important to hear about connecting all of the stakeholders into that effort. It's great to hear about the progresses we've been doing in Uganda on KYC, but also as the next steps now, we want to hear one example of one financial service providers, YouGAFOD, who has found that successful business case of working with refugees, because those are so critical. So Huntington, inviting you now to share a little bit with us what happens when the plans for financial inclusion are facing the needs on the ground and the realities. there's been a high demand for services. How have you at YouGovFood been able to serve some of the users and overcome some of the challenges? Thank you. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you so much, Charlene, for having me. I hope I'm loud and clear. YouGovFood Microfinance is very important to appreciate the background on how we entered financial inclusion for refugees. And we've just been down this road for 2 years, having begun in 2019, with a lot of support from Office of the Prime Minister. With them we got an MOU, of course, UNHCR enabling us to have a refugee readiness environment. And I mean, that is very important to build a refugee readiness environment, both for the internal staff at YouGovFood, at management level, at board level, but also on how we are going to reach out in the market. Because remember, it's important to mention the challenge that we appreciate that refugees speak a number of languages, and answering into these language problems, communicating. I've had a lot of financial literacy, and those are key discussions I want to go deep into, but we think are very important. So YouGovFood found it necessary to enter the space of refugees because it's a new frontier and it suits into our vision and mission as straight away. So having got the necessary approvals from Bank of Uganda, our board, and of course blessing from management, we did the Urban Refugee Front in 2019 and we opened up over 1,500 accounts. This gave us energy and insights into thinking and really looking out for partners who would help us go to the rural front. And that's how we got partners like Grameen Credit Agricole, with all due respect, and CEDA. They really supported us in going into Nachiva, the refugee settlement, where on 2nd March 2020, we were able to open up the first branch of a regulated financial institution in a refugee settlement. I remember when you talk about March in the context of Uganda, 2020, that's the time we're going into COVID-related lockdown on the 18th March. But fortunately, financial services were deemed essential. So for us, the game changer here is that a proof of concept clearly came out that despite the challenge of lockdown, being a new branch in Achibare, we have been able to open up over 1,600 accounts. And clearly this spells out that there is a very good opportunity here. There was a need for services. And we've seen refugees and the host community working to do money transmission services. And again, digging deep into that, we should remember that under lockdown, people are not allowed to move. Speaking about Nachiva, the base camp, there are over 40 kilometers to go to Kabingo, which is the nearest town where they would go to get a service. If we hadn't opened up in time, they would have missed this service. So we saw a lot of traffic for money transmission services, Western Union, MoneyGram. We're able to build onto that, and we noticed we had to do a lot of financial literacy to explain why write down your name, why wash your hands. Like we did a lot of other non-financial services, which we think is a very big topic for discussion, and we have to think of budget, and now we're going to be covering this. But speaking through all that and saying all the numbers that I'm mentioning, but we could have done much more if we pause a little bit and look at the KYC challenge. When you start serving refugees, you imagine everybody has a refugee ID, like it said. Refugee ID is available. There's an enabling policy. There's a Refugee Act. But we've noticed that less than almost 30% of refugees who have expressed interest to open an account can ever produce a refugee ID as a mode of identification. And to us as a regulated financial institution, once our regulator gives us a license and gives us a go-ahead to run this kind of pilot project or business case, and we agree that a refugee ID will be the mode of reference for KYC, that has to be law, so it has to be provided. So we really feel that with that not being available, there are so many refugees who have been left out of the financial inclusion case. And that's why this discussion is so important for us at YouGovFood to figure out how can we address this challenge. And I know I'm very happy to see UNCDF here and organizing this. We've had discussions of eKYC. How can we start addressing that? What would be required to speak to NHSR, OPM, and other parties? We have, for every refugee ID that we get, say on a typical Tuesday like this, we have to send it to OPM for verification. And when we take it for verification, it could take a day or 2 or 3 days. And this, remember, this is a manual process. Therefore, there could be Mondays which are missed out. The people may not be on their desk to reply or to verify that number. And of course, we are doing all this to ensure that we have the right clients on board. We don't have fraudulent tendencies. We've already experienced some IDs which are fake. Some Ugandans possibly want to be a refugee, so they get the necessary benefits. Some refugees possibly they have had challenges of getting a refugee ID at the areas where they need services. So plus or minus, there have been challenges to do with delays in verification due to the underlying KYC. And we think going forward, we have to figure out, is a family attestation another document to be used? And the powers that be figure out how we can convince all the necessary stakeholders to use it. And again, we should continue also enabling the refugee community to appreciate. I know a lot has been done on the humanitarian and livelihood front, but for private players like Hugaford come on board, a lot of financial literacy has to be passed on to enable refugees appreciate that they have to pay back the money. It's not free. It's a business. And remember, this has been emphasized by all stakeholders that we should offer financial services at the same terms in which we are giving them to the host community so that they live in harmony with each other. So figuring out all these dynamics has been a process. Sharon, can I continue? I saw you like stopping me.
Just 1 minute of conclusion, please.
Thank you. So continuing to figure out other models in which we can enable scale is our next step in offering financial inclusion for refugees. Frankly speaking, we think the proof of concept has worked. We now feel, well, if we have the right partners to work with, we should be going to other refugee settlements. We should be scaling out to other refugee settlements. Refugees want visibility. I know we are promoting a remote account opening. We want to try digital products, but they also feel very comfortable having a face with someone, having a presence, having a point of reference so that they can get confidence. They have had issues of also fraudulent transactions in their countries where they have come from. So when they're very happy to know that your office is nearby, so many kilometers away. If there's an issue, I'll find you here. So for refugees, really, we think for that market, we shall continue figuring out how to have presence through any model that can enable direct services, interaction with the human face as we try out other digital modules. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannington. This was really inspiring. Also hearing about the successes of being able to continue some businesses during the lockdown and hearing this call to action for stakeholders also outside of the humanitarian field. If we want to really get to progress, we need to definitely have all of those other players engaged, like Hugaford has been. Also liked the suggestions about moving into the eKYC. And this will be something we can discuss more in a breakout room soon. We are a little bit pressed for time, so I will invite my colleague Ronald to share with us one of the questions that was picked from the chat box. After this, there will be an opportunity to discuss more during the breakout groups, in case some of the questions have not been answered, but also the panelists will be given an opportunity to continue answering in writing on the chat box, as they've been already doing, so we can help maybe answer as many questions as possible. But for now, Ronald, please, one question for our panelists.
Yeah, thanks very much, Charlene. And a question that came from Henry at the beginning relates to the coexistence and the provision of services for both host and refugee communities that live together. So maybe Tyson, from the work Moban Sacco is doing, because Moban Sacco transcends refugee host communities, what specifically is Moban advancing to ensure that both communities are served, but also if there are any opportunities for collaboration or cross services within the refugee and host community without treating them as isolated groups. Thanks, Tyson.
All right. By the mode of our makeup, being a SACCO is a member-owned institution, financial institution. It's a member-owned, member-run, member-benefiting as Arya said, that the both communities, nationalities, sorry,
this is better, thanks.
Are you getting me right?
Yeah, it's good now, thanks.
Thank you. With the existence of, by the makeup of a formation that is being a circle savings and formed by members who are from the community, our membership currently is between refugees and nationals, where refugees form 62% of the membership and nationals form 38% of nationals. Our mode, one of the other reasons why we are existing is integration. We need to, we preach peace. We preach peaceful coexistence of the two different people. We are different by the words, but we are the same people by the roots, even the behaviors, even the actions. So our services don't differentiate between a refugee or a national. We developed a mode of operation whereby it was member benefiting, not segregating either one if one is a national, if one is a refugee. So by the existence of the percentages that are, as Arya said, we always sit and have meetings to make sure that our products, financial products, are set to meet the standards, to meet to serve both nationals and refugees at equally without any form of segregation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tyson. A good inclusion case study from this experience. We have so many more questions in the chat, but we cannot take them all in person. So the panelists will continue answering in the chat, and we can also discuss some of those questions in the breakout groups. So now we are going to be moving into the breakout groups, and we will have 20 minutes of discussion in smaller groups. We will have 4 thematic groups, one on financial literacy, one on financial innovations, one on access for women, and one on KYC. There will be a facilitator in each of the breakout rooms with you that will share more details on the process for those 20 minutes of discussion. But please bring all of those questions and excitement from the plenary into your groups. Rachel, over to you to distribute us in the 4 groups. Everyone, you will now see yourself move out of the plenary. Let's just take 2 minutes to arrive into our groups, and then we will reconvene here in 20 minutes. Thank you. There was so much to discuss. Thank you for the lively discussion. Let's just, is everyone back? All the meeting rooms have been closed?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you everyone for staying on for the last part of our webinar. As we are moving forward, we wanted to invite you to take a small poll. And to do that, we invite you to visit the website slido.com. The link will be in the chat box, slido.com, and you will be given an opportunity to share anonymously something that you will be taking home from this session. So based on all of the discussions we've had, the panelists we heard, the different breakout group discussions, what are changes that you will consider making or that you will make to your activity based on the discussion of today? What new ideas will you bring back to your team for discussion? So when you go to the website slido.com, you will be asked to put in a code. The code is 71799, 71799, and it's also in the chat box. And then you can just start putting in some ideas about changes you would like to make to your activity based on the discussion we had today, some ideas that you want to bring back to your team so that you can continue innovating and improving your services for refugees to support more financial inclusion. And I'm going to, we are seeing a lot of things coming through, and I will also share my screen so you can all see the feedback. But someone is saying that one of the important things from this webinar is that they will want to look into how to support refugees' ability to build their transaction history. Some people said they want to be really looking at women inclusion. They want to look into options to digitize financial education trainings. I really invite you to just drop ideas here, because all of the material from today, the discussions we had, the notes from the groups, etc., we are aiming to capture that really important information on barriers and opportunities into a learning document that we will share back with all of you, and that can help us moving this important agenda of financial inclusion forward. So on the slido.com page, once you've entered code 71799, then you can share some ideas of changes you would like to bring into your activity. And I'm just going to read a few of them to you. Someone said they want to deliberately be targeting SMEs and organizations that are supporting refugees at the last mile, thereby helping them to access more than one telecom service and build a credit-worthy digital track record. Someone mentioned something specific on leveraging WFP's experience in interoperability between agent banking and mobile money in Nakiwale as a recommendation that many people should be looking into. Someone shared that legal and health aspects should be included in financial literacy curriculums. Thank you so much for really sharing all of those insights. Please feel free to put in more into the Slido poll. Otherwise, we are now coming to the last minutes of the webinar, and we would like to give the opportunity for one person from each group to, sorry, Tyson, why are you sharing your screen? We would like to ask one person from each of the breakout rooms to tell us a little bit about what was discussed in their breakout group.
Robert, you're mute.
Oh, okay, let me ask him to unmute.
Thank you. Hello, am I being heard?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. I'm sharing the achievements from the discussion, where we managed to train a number of people, and from the group discussion, where we have realized that 75% of the people that undergo our teams are called compared to the time before, where only 5% had bank accounts, and 68 of them involved in income generating activities, compared to before, where only 8% were involved income generating activities. And 85% currently are part of village savings associations compared to before, where we only had 13%. And this is an achievement. Lessons learned, financial literacy is as important as knowing how to read and write. Financial literacy education should be delivered to the clients alongside education. This would reduce on the sickness, medical bills, and in turn enhance individuals' savings. Then we also learned that the legal environment should provide basic transparent information to the individuals so that their confidence is increased to seek and use the services, the financial services available. And then there's a great need to scale up the digitalization of the financial services, such that even when a person is alone, can still make some transactions.
Thank you very much, Robert. I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you now. We need to give an opportunity to the next breakout groups. So if we can, I'm sorry about this. Thank you for the summary. This was very helpful. For the next room on financial innovations, can the speaker share some insights, please? And let's try to keep it to 3 to 4 minutes.
Thank you, Charlene, and thank you all, especially the team who participated under the financial innovation. I want to bring to the audience some of the key financial innovations that have been presented by the different agents and actors, including the agent banking, the mobile money systems, and then the prepaid cards through some financial banking institutions like Stanbic. While these are the common kind of innovations, financial innovations that have been highlighted across settlements and also host communities, there were also challenges that were related to some of these services. For instance, the UCC position on validation of SIM cards based on the KYC sometimes really limits so much. You find cards are blocked and therefore transactions are not being done well. Also, you find there are also some errors that emerge, especially when transfers have been made through mobile money, and then through the time of transfer, there is a validation error that comes out in the system, and therefore a beneficiary misses out the money. As part of the challenges that are facing some of these. Then also we realize that agents have come up with some innovative ways of coming up with kind of integrated platforms. Like there is a card that WFP has introduced that can bridge between mobile money and also mobile agent banking. No, the agent banking, so that participants, beneficiaries can still access their money. There were questions that we were not able to still discuss, especially we had some clue about it, but little was discussed because of time. It was around the panic around security and safety of mobile money due to the hacking that took place within MTN and Airtel. So we don't know really, wanted to know much more what private sectors are trying to do in order to calm the pressure. Basically, these are the key take that we have at this point. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Interesting how financial inclusion connects to so many topics, including cyber security. Thanks for this. We are going to move on to the third group, which was on accessibility for women.
Omon, please, can you share the findings from the group?
Rachel, what's Omon's surname? I could ask him to unmute.
Okoma Olia. Olia, I'm not sure if I've said it properly, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes,
Okay, hi. I was trying to send a chat to enable me on the mute mode. Okay, so we had an interesting session. A lot was covered, but I'll just try to summarize them into 3 bullets. So the main discussion was around access to barriers or hurdles women face in opening accounts, savings, access to credits, and investment. So a lot of the hurdles that was highlighted is around their inability to actually own land. So land ownership, inability to take and make decisions, lack of digital literacy, lack of financial literacy. And then there's also issues around traditional norms where women are really not exposed to all of these financial services because they're more or less really more at home, taking care of the family as opposed to accessing some of these financial services. So there's that low level of literacy rates. And then there's the fact that women, a lot of women seem not to own phones or are not able to purchase phones. So that's empowerment, again, goes back to decision-making level is also an issue. We also talked about wrong perception in terms of barriers and hurdles. The second bucket was around what are some of those enablers that would help in terms of financial health for women-led businesses. And one of them was around, creating or financial innovation. So products that are more focused on serving women-led businesses. And there's need for financial institutions to understand some of those issues that I mentioned earlier, that would enable women, drive and actually own some of these businesses. One of the other financial health was around access to traditional collateral. And this is really more for individual women to enable them borrow more, since most FIs would require some form of collateral. And then, of course, there's that innovation. How can we provide those products that will enable women, access credits and also be able to fulfill those requirements by the financial institution in terms of collateral. There was a very good point around device financing, and they mentioned that I believe it was MTN, one of the mobile network operators that provide financing for women to enable them purchase mobile phones and make payments over a period of time. Again, there's a digital literacy training for women-sensitive approach that was mentioned also in our discussion. The last bucket was around impacts of COVID-19 on women, and this includes families. So there were discussions around how men seem to have abandoned their families because of all the challenges that has really come up due to the impacts of COVID. And then due to the restrictive movements, it has led a lot of businesses to suffer, to shut down, and really left families and homes to struggle within a limited income. So let me leave it at that. I'm trying to stay within the time frame of 3 minutes, but yes, those were just high-level discussion points. Thank you. Over to you, Charlene.
Thank you, Omon, for the brief summary. So for the last group, which was on KYC, may I invite the speaker to share another 3 minutes of key takeaways.
Thanks, Charlene. Thanks to the members that participated in the KYC, Disan Kataura here. So at the KYC group, we looked at 3 key major items regarding KYC. One was speeding up the KYC accessibility for the refugees, whereby we realize majority don't have the ID, the refugee IDs, which are regulatorily required and recognized KYC details. And then we also looked at acceptance of the available KYC, like the attestation letters, which majority have, and yet when you look at regulated institutions, are mandated to use the refugee ID, for which majority don't have it. Then we also looked at accessibility to the database, for which you realize the key point is on validating the IDs, whether they are valid or not, which takes to an average 1 to 3 days. So accessibility is key in ensuring that we increase also the adoption of digital channels and speeding up the customer experience on onboarding refugees. And then the last one is also to ensure that at least the data protection is part and key, in addition to the accessibility through the UNHCR or the OPM. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chisan. A few really important points as a wrap up. We are at the end of time allotted for this session. I want to thank all the participants for the engagement. Special mention as well to our experts on our panel today. It was great hearing from you. And also thank you to the facilitators, our partners who made this possibility. As a next step, you will be hearing from us by receiving a link to the recording of this meeting. It will be on YouTube in case you want to go back to any of this, but also a link to ask you to take a short survey on this experience of today. Like everyone around the meeting, we've done a jump into digital meetings a few months back, but we welcome your feedback on what can be improved, or as well suggestions on how you would like to see the agenda of this multi-stakeholder discussion around financial inclusion move forward. On our end, we will be compiling a lot of the insights of today into a learning document, and it will be shared as well with the whole ecosystem. I just want to check with my facilitators if anything is missing from those concluding remarks.
No, I'm good. That looks good. Thanks.
Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, for this great discussion, and have a good day. We look forward to continuing the financial inclusion, barriers and opportunities discussion with all of you. Goodbye.